The early 20th century was a time of great change and even greater tension. The world was rapidly modernizing, with technological advancements and industrial growth transforming societies. Yet, beneath this progress, there was a simmering unease. Europe was a network of alliances with nations bound to one another by treaties and agreements. These alliances were meant to provide security, but they also created a web of obligations that could easily drag countries into conflict. The great powers of Europe, Germany, Austria, Hungary, Russia, Great Britain and France all had their own ambitions and rivalries. Each nation sought to expand its influence and protect its interests, often at the expense of others. Germany, a rising industrial giant, felt increasingly hemmed in by its neighbors. Its leaders believed that the nation's future prosperity depended on securing more territory and resources. It sought a larger role on the world stage, building a powerful navy and seeking colonies overseas to compete with other empires. France, still smarting from its defeat in the Franco-Prussian War, yearned to regain its lost territory of Alsace-Lorraine. The memory of their loss fueled a desire for revenge and a determination to restore national pride. In the east, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, a patchwork of different ethnicities, struggled to hold itself together. The empire was a fragile entity, with various groups seeking greater autonomy or outright independence. Nationalism was on the rise, threatening to tear the empire apart. The diverse populations within its borders were increasingly restless, each group pushing for its own national identity. Russia, claiming to be the protector of the Slavic peoples, viewed Austria-Hungary's ambitions in the Balkans with suspicion. The Balkans were a region of strategic importance, and both empires had vested interests there. The stage was set for a conflict of unprecedented scale. Military build-ups and strategic planning were underway as nations prepared for the possibility of war. Europe, armed and wary, stood on the brink of a precipice. The tension was palpable, and the slightest spark could ignite a devastating conflict. The world held its breath, unaware of the horrors that awaited. The coming years would bring unprecedented destruction and change, reshaping the world in ways no one could have foreseen. The system of alliances, meant to deter aggression, instead acted as a catalyst for war. These alliances were complex and interwoven, creating a fragile balance of power that could easily be tipped. Germany and Austria-Hungary had formed the Dual Alliance in 1879, a pact of mutual defense. This alliance was intended to protect both nations from potential threats, particularly from Russia. In response, France and Russia, wary of German power, entered into their own alliance in 1894. This Franco-Russian alliance was a strategic move to counterbalance the growing influence of Germany and its allies. Great Britain, traditionally wary of continental entanglements, found itself drawn into the web of alliances. The shifting dynamics in Europe made it increasingly difficult for Britain to remain isolated. Concerned by Germany's growing naval power, Britain signed the Entente Cordiale with France in 1904. This agreement aimed to resolve colonial disputes and strengthen their position against the German threat. This agreement, though not a formal military alliance, marked a significant shift in British foreign policy. It paved the way for closer cooperation between Britain and France in the years leading up to the war. By 1914, Europe was divided into two armed camps, the Central Powers consisting of Germany, Austria-Hungary and Italy. These nations shared common interests and mutual defense agreements, and the Triple Entente, made up of France, Russia and Great Britain. This alliance was formed to counter the threat posed by the Central Powers and to maintain the balance of power in Europe. These alliances meant that a conflict between any two nations could quickly escalate into a wider war. The intricate web of treaties and agreements ensured that once one nation was drawn into conflict, its allies would soon follow, leading to a full-scale war. The spark that ignited the powder keg came on a sunny June day in Sarajevo, Bosnia. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his wife, Sophie, were assassinated by Gavrilo Principi, a Serbian nationalist. The assassination sent shockwaves across Europe. Austria-Hungary, outraged by the act, held Serbia responsible. Germany, bound by its treaty with Austria-Hungary, offered its unconditional support. Austria-Hungary issued an ultimatum to Serbia, a harsh document containing demands that Serbia could not possibly accept. Serbia, backed by Russia, attempted to negotiate, but Austria-Hungary was determined to crush Serbian nationalism. On July 28, 1914, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, setting in motion the chain of events that would plunge Europe into the abyss. In the early days of the war, German strategy hinged on the Schlieffen Plan, a bold military plan designed to knock France out of the war quickly. The plan called for a rapid advance through Belgium, bypassing the heavily fortified French border. The Germans believed that by capturing Paris swiftly, they could force France to surrender and then turn their full attention to Russia. German armies swept through Belgium, their advance marked by brutality and civilian casualties. The invasion caused widespread destruction and forced thousands of Belgian civilians to flee their homes, creating a humanitarian crisis. The French army, though initially reeling, fought back with determination. Despite being caught off guard, French soldiers regrouped and mounted a fierce resistance, determined to defend their homeland at all costs. The British Expeditionary Force, arriving in France in August 1914, helped to stem the German tide. These well-trained troops provided crucial support to the beleaguered French forces, bolstering their defences and adding much-needed manpower. The First Battle of the Marne, fought in September 1914, proved to be a turning point in the war. This significant battle saw the Allies launch a counter-offensive that halted the German advance and saved Paris from capture. The French, aided by British troops, launched a desperate counterattack, stopping the German advance just miles from Paris. This bold move forced the Germans to retreat and abandon their plans for a quick victory. The Schlieffen Plan was in ruins. The failure of this strategy marked the end of Germany's hopes for a swift and decisive victory in the West. The war on the Western Front settled into a bloody stalemate. Both sides dug in, creating extensive trench networks that would define the conflict for years to come. Trenches, stretching for hundreds of miles from the English Channel to the Swiss Alps, became the defining feature of the war. These trenches, filled with mud, rats, and the constant threat of enemy attack, symbolized the grueling and relentless nature of World War I. Section 5. Verdun, the Devil's Anvil. In 1916, the Germans launched a massive offensive at Verdun, a fortress city in northeastern France. Their aim was to bleed the French white by inflicting such heavy casualties that they would be forced to surrender. The Battle of Verdun, lasting from February to December 1916, became one of the longest and bloodiest battles in human history. Both sides fought with unimaginable ferocity, enduring unimaginable horrors. The French, though suffering terrible losses, held on to Verdun. The battle became a symbol of French resilience. The Germans, their offensive blunted, had failed to achieve their strategic objective. Verdun left an indelible scar on the French psyche. The battlefield, pockmarked with shell craters and littered with the bones of fallen soldiers, stands as a grim reminder of the war's brutality. Section 6. Voices from the Trenches. The horrors of trench warfare are best understood through the words of the soldiers who endured them. Letters, diaries, and poems written by soldiers provide a glimpse into the daily realities of life and death on the front lines. One British soldier, Wilfred Owen, wrote of the war's devastating impact on a generation. What passing bells for these who die as cattle, only the monstrous anger of the guns. Erich Maria Remarque, a German veteran, captured the disillusionment and despair felt by many soldiers. We are little flames poorly sheltered by frail walls against the wind of despair. These voices from the trenches serve as a stark reminder of the human cost of war. They speak of courage, resilience, and the enduring bonds of comradeship forged in the crucible of battle. Section 7. Technological Advancements, a double-edged sword. World War I witnessed unprecedented technological advancements in warfare. Machine guns, artillery, tanks, poison gas, and airplanes transformed the battlefield, making the war far more lethal than any previous conflict. The machine gun, capable of firing hundreds of rounds per minute, turned infantry charges into suicide missions. Artillery bombardments, often lasting for days, pulverized the landscape and inflicted horrific casualties. Poison gas, first used by the Germans in 1915, added a new dimension of horror to the war. Chlorine gas, mustard gas, and phosgene gas caused blindness, excruciating burns, and agonizing deaths. These Technological advancements, while increasing the killing power of armies, did little to break the stalemate on the Western Front. The war, once envisioned as a short and decisive affair, had bogged down into a brutal war of attrition. Section 8, the Treaty of Versailles, Seeds of Resentment. The war in Europe finally came to an end on November 11, 1918. Germany, defeated and exhausted, signed the armistice. The world, weary of war, rejoiced. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, officially ended the war. The treaty, however, sowed the seeds of future conflict. Germany, blamed for the war, was forced to accept harsh terms, including territorial losses, disarmament, and crippling reparations payments. The treaty left Germany humiliated and resentful, creating a fertile breeding ground for extremist ideologies. The seeds of World War II had been sown. And Section 9, the enduring legacy of the Great War. World War I was a watershed moment in human history. The war shattered empires, redrew the map of Europe, and ushered in an era of uncertainty and instability. The war had a profound impact on the 20th century, shaping the political, social, and cultural landscape of the world. It led to the rise of totalitarian regimes, the collapse of colonialism, and the emergence of new technologies and ideas. The war's legacy continues to be felt today. It serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict and the importance of diplomacy and international cooperation in maintaining peace.